Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Gigi for ComicWow, coming at you from Baltimore Comic Con 2014. I am standing here with the tall and strapping Garth Ennis, creator of some legendary books, Preacher, Hellblazer, The Punisher, Hitman. So you've had some phenomenal runs on many iconic books. What process do you use to get into the character? Because your story really, your characters kind of come on point, and it's like you can almost hear the character after you're done reading it. It's like you're kind of in their head. So how do you get to that point?
Really, it helps that all the characters you've described really do rather fit my mindset, largely because of the stuff I myself read as a kid. So something like The Punisher, for instance, I sometimes think of The Punisher as a British character who was accidentally born on the wrong side of the Atlantic, because he just doesn't fit into a superhero world. He's a vigilante killer. If anything, he's inspired by movies rather than other comics, which is unusual for comic book characters. Most of them simply reference each other. Frank comes from, Death Wish, Dirty Harry, that kind of vigilante genre that became big in 70s cinema, and that's the stuff I was watching as a kid, and that's why it works so well for me when I write those characters.
That's pretty cool. And it's, as you're saying that, I was thinking that you write a lot of justice-driven characters that have their own code, so almost like anti-heroes. What draws you to write these characters that way? Is it that inspiration from movies, or is it just you kind of feel like they want to do well, but they've kind of got their own way of doing it?
I think it's really that I find those characters' motivation a little closer to the real world. I find it next to impossible to write superheroes with any degree of conviction, because that I have powers, I will put on a costume, what Warren Ellis memorably called a pervert suit. I find that completely fake, because it has no, there is nothing in the real world that has any relation to that. Whereas on the other hand, the notion of vigilantism, the notion of one person setting out for revenge, well, there are countless examples of that throughout history.
That's interesting, because I was actually talking in a previous interview about the fact that what I love about comics is the fantastical essence, is that there are things that aren't going to happen in the real world, and you take more the point, which a lot of stories do, is what you want to see happen in the actual real world. So.
It's really, what it comes down to is I have a limited degree of interest in fantasy, with a small f, not necessarily just the genre. Science fiction, superheroes, I can read a certain amount of it, but I pretty soon run into my own limits, because if I can't find anything with relevance, with some degree of relevance to the real world, then I do slowly start to lose interest. And that, I think, is something that comes across in my work. I'm always trying to find a hook, a way in, and it has to be that relevance, I think.
One of our team members here is a humongous Punisher fan.
Okay.
Like, literally every person that has walked by, we have seen, so two people, as our cameraman nods, every person that's walked by in a Punisher shirt, he has acknowledged and said, great shirt, great shirt. So what was your favorite part of writing Frank Castle, Punisher?
I think well, what helps is how enormously easy it is to get the character right. He couldn't be simpler. He puts on this skull shirt, that's as close as he ever gets to putting on a costume.
A pervert suit.
His own pervert suit. Straps on the guns and the ammunition and goes to work. There's a real elegant simplicity to it. And as I say, the motivation, the morality of it is something that I find more relatable than really any other mainstream character. So yes, it is that simplicity. Frank's really like a gun. You just point him at the problem and he goes straight to work. And he's incredibly reliable too. He will never not do his thing. There's no moral quandary, there's no doubt. He's just always going to do that. Like a gun, like a machine.
That's a good way to put it. I think that phrases it well. You've taken a lot of classic monster archetypes and revised them for a modern era. How do you view this trend, and where do you see your role in it?
That's exactly the kind of thing I rarely think about, my role in a particular trend and so on. I really just do my work and put it out there and hope for the best. In terms of monsters, again, I have limited interest in fantasy, so when I set out to do something like Crossed, for instance, I thought, well, let's make humanity themselves the villain, the monster. Let's make human evil weaponized as a virus. Let's make that the monster, because in my view, nothing in fiction comes anywhere near the horrors of the real world, the horrors of the things people have been doing to each other for the last 5,000 years. We have Dracula beat every single time.
Humanity is the ultimate villain.
Yes.
And it lives on forever. Will there be a Stitched movie, you think?
Right now there are no plans. We may revisit that someday.
Okay.
But right now there are no plans.
Is there anything on the horizon for you right now? Special projects, anything you're working on you'd like to let the ComicWow viewers know about?
Well, let me think. I've got a new Punisher series coming out next year set in Vietnam. I have another series of Red Team. There's a lot of interesting stuff coming up on Crossed. We have some very interesting writers working on that. I can't really give you too many details. Yeah. But for me, the most interesting thing is that in October, Avatar Press are launching a new War Story series where I get to do, well, literally war stories, short 3-4 part arcs, revolving art team, really my favorite stuff to write. So that kicks off in October.
Now, as a creator, I know you write for what you love, and you know this is all based on your own creativity, but is there anybody that if you got a compliment from regarding your work, somebody specific that you would be like most stoked about? Like, oh my God, that person said they're a big fan of my work. Well,
yeah, actually. I've reestablished contact with Alan Moore after many years, and he and I are big fans of each other's work. Alan is probably the one opinion that would change my mind about what I do, were he to offer a contrary one. To me, he's simply the most talented guy the industry's ever seen or ever will see. The fact that he likes my stuff really means everything.
That's really cool. Do you remember your first Comic Con that you attended?
It was a British one in 1988. And I wasn't actually in the industry at that point, and I went along, got a few things signed in London, and I remember thinking, this is fun, but those guys, meaning all the writers and artists and editors and so on in the bar, they look like they're having more fun. I need to get into this, and it worked out great.
Yeah, and so how does that compare now to being here at this con 2014?
There I am in the bar. It worked out great.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I have a little bit of a lengthy question for you, so bear with me. Okay. So Red Team was a return to noir-style comics, which have been heading in different directions, moving established characters into noir storylines, Punisher, Deadpool, etc., and establishing new lines that are more noir, less trend. Which of these trends do you see as making more impact on the development of the genre?
I think really anything that takes us further away from traditional superhero stories is probably a positive development. If we're going to do anything with the medium, if we're going to make it grow, we have to just show that we can, like any other medium, TV, film, prose, we have to show that we can do anything. And for me, Red Team was a chance to take the kind of things that have been big on TV in recent years, The Wire, The Shield, to a lesser extent The Sopranos and Breaking Bad, but crime, and try to do it as a comic. And I enjoyed doing it very much. In fact, there's a second series coming out next year.
Oh, fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Garth. I can't thank you enough for our ComicWow viewers and all the information that you've given them. We hope the rest of the con is successful for you as well.
Thanks.
And so Garth Ennis here, I'm Gigi, ComicWow.com. You can find out more information about all his upcoming projects, and you're welcome.